And I thought, well, what did you see? Then why did you arrest us if you were watching us? But yeah, so we didn't realize that. We knew in China you're always surveilled, you're always watched. But we didn't think anything of it because we thought, well, we're not doing anything to cause any problem.
For 30 years, he lived peacefully in China, helping orphanages, starting businesses, and even running a coffee shop near the North Korean border. But one night, after an innocent dinner meeting, everything changed. He was abducted, falsely accused of being a spy, and thrown into a Chinese prison for nearly 2 years. Separated from his wife, interrogated, and threatened with execution. Yet through it all, something miraculous happened. This is the powerful true story of faith, survival, and how God moved behind bars.
A lot of people were praying for your release, behind the scenes, obviously working for your release. Mm-hmm. You were working in China for 30 years with no problems.
Right. No problem. We worked in 7 different cities. We helped orphanages. We worked with churches. We started companies. The last thing we did, we have a coffee house on the border with China and North Korea, and we're doing aid work into North Korea and still helping with orphanages, school for the disabled, things like that.
And you had a good relationship with the Chinese government, you would have thought, up until the day of your arrest.
Well, I mean, they knew everything we were doing. We never tried to hide anything, didn't try to do things secretly. We just, we were open. Even our coffee house didn't have any private rooms, which is common in China for businesses to have things like that, but we were open. We wanted to be open with who we were.
So when you moved to that border of North Korea, that really was the beginning of your problems, right?
Yes.
It's a sensitive area you didn't realize, but you were under increased scrutiny.
Right. So they told me during the interrogation, the first 6 months, they said, we watched you since you came. And I thought, well, what did you see? Then why did you arrest us if you were watching us? But yeah, so we didn't realize that. We knew in China you're always surveilled, you're always watched. But we didn't think anything of it because we thought, well, we're not doing anything to cause any problem.
And for 30 years, it was fine.
Right.
So you had some high-profile Canadian officials come by, journalists come by. All of that was kind of raising red flags, like, yes. Oh, this is a big concern.
Yeah.
So tell me about that day you were arrested, because this was a complete out-of-the-blue thing.
It was completely out of the blue. I had felt some tension in my spirit beforehand, and I said to our team, the worst that would ever happen, they would kick us out of China, which is right and wrong. But the day we were taken, we'd gone to dinner, and a friend had set it up for us. Could you talk to this couple about their daughter going to study in Canada? And we thought, sure, great. And we went to the dinner, had the dinner. The daughter didn't show up. They said she had a toothache. We thought, okay, a little strange. And as Julie and I were leaving, we said, just like that's a bit odd. It just seemed like an odd dinner. I don't know what it was. Something was odd about it. We get down to the lobby of the restaurant, and when we came in, it was empty. When we were going out, it was probably a couple of dozen people there. And Julia said, oh, it looks like a wedding. We better get out of the way. Well, it wasn't a wedding. It was basically an abduction. They took us, separated us, and I didn't see Julia for months after that.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So you're taken to prison, and you begin interrogation now. So were you tortured?
Never tortured physically. Threatened with execution, threatened with 7 or 8 years in prison, kept saying we're spies, I kept saying we're not spies, and but that kind of wears on you after a long time when you only have yourself to talk to, and of course you have God to talk to as well. But I just kept praying and asking God, but you're crying too because it's painful and it's hard.
I think sometimes as people of faith, we romanticize these stories, like God's present and your faith is overwhelming, and I'm sure there's those moments, but you're also human, and you're scared, and you don't know what's happening to your wife. Mm-hmm. Were there really dark moments?
There were really dark moments when I focused on the situation, and there are dark moments when they told me things like, oh, it's going to be at least another 6 months, and I felt despair. But God, when I called to Him, answered. But it still felt the pain. But there are many times, probably many times every day, that God would answer in a verse or a song or in that peace that really surpasses all understanding. He would answer, but the pain, it didn't take the pain away. I just knew that God was present.
How many moments did you see Julia over the 19 months that you were imprisoned?
Over the 19 months, not many, maybe half a dozen times, but it was just moments. We didn't have really a chance to talk. We had one Christmas where they allowed us about 30 minutes together. Of course, there were other guards in the room, but it wasn't many. No chance to really talk about things for over 2 years. You
were alone for the first 6 months, but then after that, you shared a cell with 14 other people.
I shared a cell with 14 other inmates. They were criminals or charged with being criminals, as I was charged, but not being a criminal. And But over those 19 months I was there, probably 80 or 90 people passed through my cell. And, petty thieves, drug addicts, policemen, former policemen, and just everything, every crime imaginable they were charged with. But I just said, the way we worked in China was, Lord, let them ask questions, and let them see the hope that we have, and let us give an answer for that hope. And so people just started asking questions. I wasn't standing on my wooden bed and saying, I got to tell you about Jesus. I was just praying, and they would ask questions. Oh, what are you reading? Oh, can you tell me some Bible stories? Or someone said to me, you're like my mother. But what he meant was, she talks about Jesus too. Can you tell me about him? Or another one had seen the Jesus film. He said, can you tell me more about Jesus? Or one man, he was actually a doctor, he said to me, Kevin, and this is on his way to the big prison of 5,000 or 6,000 people. And he said, Kevin, I want to believe like you. But that happened again and again and again. Not every day, but I kept seeing God, that he was ever present and he was always at work as he says he is.
I think there's a truth about, in going through a hard time, we see glimpses of God at work. Sometimes looking back, we get a better sense of the picture once we've had time to process and kind of see it unfold. Now you've been free, and thank God for that, for more than a year and a half.
Yes.
What is your perspective now about what God was doing in that season of your life?
I think he was doing many things. There's certainly not one thing. One was, depend on me. You can't depend on anyone else. You can only depend on me, is what he's saying. And he says that in 2 Corinthians chapter 1. He says, this happened that we might not rely upon ourselves, but on God who raises the dead. Paul said that. And God was saying to me, trust me, rely upon me. I know what I'm doing. And I had to trust that. Some days it was really hard to trust in that, because I would look at my situation and say, it's hopeless. But then God would say, bring someone into my life, or bring someone who wanted to ask a question. I would see again, God, you really are at work and you have a purpose in this.
For 19 months, he was locked away, isolated, interrogated, and falsely accused. But even in a dark prison cell, God was there. Not in loud miracles, but in quiet moments. A song, a verse, a stranger's question. And that's what makes this story so powerful. It wasn't just about surviving injustice. It was about witnessing how God moves, even when the world tries to silence the truth. In that cell, surrounded by criminals and chaos, hearts were softened. Questions were asked. The name of Jesus echoed in a place meant to crush hope. And it all started with one man's willingness to say, yes, Lord, even here. Friend, we don't always get to choose our battles, but we can choose how we respond. If Kevin's story touched your heart, take a moment to reflect. Ask yourself, how is God asking me to be faithful in the hard places? Then do something about it. If this testimony moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories of faith and perseverance. God bless you.